So the mission of the Federal Criminal Justice Clinic is really twofold. We're trying to address two of the most pressing issues in, civil rights issues really of our time, okay? Mass incarceration and over-incarceration and racial inequity in the federal criminal legal system. So we approach this mission through individual representation and also systemic reform work. We give preference to 3Ls, but we always have room for 2Ls, and Claire, who's going to speak to you, was a 2L and 3L in our clinic. We are now, right now, I'll start by telling you about the fact that we are leading federal bail reform efforts in this country. Our clinic is at the forefront of that. For several years now, I've been running this multi-pronged campaign that we call the Federal Bail Watching Project. So our goal is really to change the system, change the law, all with the ultimate aim of reducing the number of people who are locked in jail pending trial in the federal system. So our clinic students created the first ever court watching project in the federal system. And we discovered that prosecutors and judges in Chicago, where we started our court watching, were jailing people in violation of the law and creating racial disparities. After I presented our data to the judges, they actually began changing how they do things. They began following the law. And so really our court watching changed the entrenched culture of detention in Chicago. And then last year, we expanded our court watching project along with Claire and a bunch of other students. We deputized clinic students at a bunch of other law schools also, and we watched over 500 federal bail hearings. And we watched them remotely via Zoom. We watched in Boston, Baltimore, Miami, and Salt Lake City, Utah. And this year, our students have been analyzing the data, and they've been writing this really incredible report about our findings, and we're publishing that report this summer. So our report shows, prosecutors and judges ignoring the law, depriving people of their right to counsel, and sometimes even literally locking people in jail illegally in the federal system. So to bring more attention to this crisis, last year, a clinic student and I wrote an op-ed in the New York Times. The goal of that was to call on President Biden and his AG to support federal bail reform. And our students also rewrote the federal bail statute. So we submitted our rewrite to the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. He liked it so much, he invited me to testify before Congress. And then he actually introduced our rewrite of the statute as a bill. It hasn't passed yet, but we are having real impact at all of these levels. And at this point, I've now presented our data to 1/3 of the federal judges in this country who make these bail decisions. And I've been training thousands of federal public defenders and pretrial services officers. And these interventions of ours, they're really bringing about change at the national level. So I want to just show you this chart. This shows federal jailing rates rising for decades. Until 2018, which is the year we started this project. And then the rates finally level off between 2018 and 19. And then in 2020, jailing rates dropped precipitously, and they've continued dropping in 2021. And I am really convinced this is not an accident. This is not just a result of the pandemic. This is very much a consequence of our clinic's reform work. So I just want to end by showing you a federal judge recently said to our students, I think you're having a huge impact across the country, and it's just sort of chipping away at all this and winning the judges over. So on the individual representation front, I want to talk about the work that our Professor Erica Zunkel, the Associate Director of our clinic, has been doing. She's been filing compassionate release motions to help decarcerate federal prisons. She and her students have, first of all, filed compassionate release motions during COVID-19, been incredibly successful, got 6 clients released during that time early on in the crisis. And then she's now expanded the compassionate release work to build on some groundbreaking multi-year litigation, racial discrimination litigation that our clinic did. So we're representing people who are serving draconian mandatory minimum sentences in these fake stash house cases. These are cases that ensnared almost 100 people in Chicago, almost all of them Black and brown men. And the New Yorker actually wrote about that work of ours last fall. But what Erica and her students are doing is they've been filing compassionate release motions for people still serving these 25-year mandatory minimum sentences. They've had real success. All 3 of the people they filed motions for have now been released. They filing another motion today. And all told so far, our clients have been saved about 23 years in federal prison from that advocacy alone. And so that's like 23 years that they're able to be with their families, they're able to work, they're able to live their lives. And our clinic's going to continue doing that compassionate release litigation work next year. These cases give great litigation opportunities for students. So you all get to have direct client contact, motion writing, investigation, collaboration with experts, and a lot of other responsibilities. Beyond the compassionate release work, our clinic also represents indigent clients at trial, sentencing, appeal, post-conviction in the federal system. And Professor Judith Miller has really been spearheading our trial work this year. So she and Professor Dunkel are actually in a team of students are right now in federal court on a case that's going to trial next month, which is why I am presenting for them. But a couple of students will be actively participating in that federal court jury trial. And our students have like made a real difference on that particular case. Like our client's facing really stiff drug charges, a mandatory minimum of 10 years in federal prison. And the students, but he's got a severe intellectual disability. And so the students have been fighting to get the judge to let an expert testify in the case in chief, you know, in order to substantiate that. And so we want the jury to learn that important information because we believe it of course, weighs on the ultimate question of his guilt or innocence. And we believe it makes him not guilty. So students have played a critical role in that case, in all of our trial cases. You know, they develop trial strategy, write witness examinations, and draft all the pretrial filings. And we're just always blown away by like the incredible work of our students, people like Claire and many, many others over the years. So I really hope you all will join us in this work and join us in changing the system. And now I'm going to turn it over to Claire.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Claire Downing. I'm a 3L. I've been in the clinic since the middle of my second year in law school. And I can say, like, without a question, that the clinic is by far my favorite part of law school. It's a really important change of pace from doctrinal classes. You have a huge variety of projects, and you also have kind of built-in mentors in the 3 professors that lead this clinic. I have worked very closely with all 3 of them and have found them each to provide different strengths and also to kind of bring out different skill sets in the students that they're working with. So I want to talk to you very briefly about kind of 2 main projects that I've been involved in the clinic. The first one is the bail watching project that Professor Siedler just told you about. So I have kind of seen this project through a couple different phases, starting with actual court watching, like physically going to court has happened before I joined the clinic, but because of Zoom, we watched a ton of hearings during my first year in the clinic. And that was an opportunity to be part of the first federal court watching program ever, which is super cool. And also just to kind of see firsthand what federal court is like. Something that law students often don't get the chance to actually see is just kind of a natural part of this. We also helped do data analysis by coding the information that we gathered from court watching. We interacted with judges and federal defenders to gather additional information, kind of on the ground perspectives on what we were seeing. And I've also been involved in leading the writing of our report. So we as students have a huge amount of influence over the design, structure, content, tone, etc. of the report that we're writing on this. And people in the clinic have very different backgrounds and different skill sets and can bring different insights into kind of all of these issues to really push for advocacy. I went to school right outside of DC. I spend a lot of time kind of dealing with legislative advocacy, so I have a perspective on that, and other people have, you know, totally different perspectives. And we also just, because we have this kind of firsthand knowledge based on going to court, sometimes notice things that you wouldn't otherwise see. So for example, I found one transcript where a judge said something like kind of crazy about federal bail bonds, and then we wrote memos about it, and it's now included in the report. And we're kind of highlighting this issue that we wouldn't have otherwise noticed if we hadn't just actually gone to court and watched what happened and saw things that people in other districts didn't know about. So it's just a huge opportunity to actually make national change when you're working on a project like this that deals with systemic advocacy. And yeah, so that's been amazing. The second thing that we worked on is client representation. I had the opportunity to give an oral argument before the 7th Circuit for a client that was the victim of a stash house sting back in February. He had already served 15 years and was facing 10 more. The issue was like a very complicated legal issue, which gave me an opportunity to develop both my argumentative and my research skills. And I also felt fully supported in the process by the professors that I was working with. The faculty in this clinic devoted hours to preparing me for every possible question that I could be asked, and I was way over prepared. Like, it was crazy how much, like how my fighters were like that. And then we also had this like amazing celebratory environment when the argument was over, because the professors were both invested in the client's success and in my success, which is just a huge opportunity to have. The client was actually released thanks to a compassionate release motion that was filed by other members of the clinic, which really shows that like we're taking every possible approach to help these people, especially when they're the victims of huge injustices, like what happened in this case. We're still waiting for a ruling on my argument, but we'll probably be waiting for a little bit longer. The Seventh Circuit takes a while, so stay tuned on that one. So I want to give you guys a couple reasons why I love this clinic and why it matters for you. The first one is that it is just an opportunity to make national change in ways that you won't have at really any other time in your career, at least for not like a decade. So it's a huge opportunity while you're in law school to actually see the work that you do have an impact nationally. You also get the chance to develop close working relationships with your classmates. The clinic can be super intense because you're dealing with like very difficult issues. People's lives are on the line in many ways. And so those bonds that you build based on advocating for different people at the same time is really special and important. And some of the clinic folks are my absolute best friends in law school. And you also have this chance to have deep mentoring relationships with absolutely amazing faculty, each of whom bring different skills to the table. And also, I've noticed, draw different skill sets out of students. So I really can't recommend it enough. If you guys have any questions at all, please email me. I would love to talk to you about like specifics, maybe give you more insight into specific issues that we're working on. But I mean, honestly, if all of you could join, you should. So yeah.